Everyone, thank you for joining us here today at LIFE Fellowship of Frederick as we study the Word of God together, even though we're apart. Our study today is going to take us through the Gospel of John, chapter 11, as we take some time to study what happens when God says no, how we're to respond. This is particularly poignant to us as we've, as a church, kind of suffered a collective sense of loss in our inability to host the Youth in the Community program this year. What's fascinating is that in the study through this particular passage, which happened to occur in the midst of my personal Bible study time, I found answers to questions in these verses, but not in the red letters. While Jesus is certainly the focus of the Gospels and his words bring life, what happened is my own questions were resonating before the Lord with regard to this event. I'm finding my heart echoed in the lives of those who are surrounding Jesus, offering to him their opinions and perceptions of what he should do and how he should do it and when. So as God's been reckoning inside of my heart, I believe that there could be value as well for our church. And so this is what we're going to concentrate on this week. First thing I'd like you to do is to take some time to read through the entire passage if you can. John chapter 11, verses 1 through 44. And this is because it provides the whole context for you. And it sounds like a lot of verses, but it's not very long. There's a lot of short verses, including the shortest verse, verse 35, which says Jesus wept. So it won't take a long time to do that. I've broken the narrative down into 4 sections as well. And so we're going to work through Jesus' specific interactions with 4 different groups of people. Excuse me. Scene 1 is Jesus' dialogue with his disciples. This is found in John 11, verses 1 through 16. As all of this is going down, Jesus clearly states his purpose in these events taking place the way they did in verses 4 and 15. It's important for us to identify what Jesus was hoping to accomplish because everyone's missing the point. The disciples are also in no hurry to return to the region of Bethany and Jerusalem. There's a reason for that. You can find that in John 8:54 through 59 and John 10, verses 22 through 33. I think what's fascinating is that these previous events are now shaping the way that they view this upcoming event, going to be with Lazarus and his sisters. So I want you to look through their eyes to see the perspective and listen to their words that communicate their heart's intentions. We find that in John 11:8, John 11:11 through 12, and John 11:16. The next thing we're looking at is scene 2, Jesus' dialogue with Lazarus' sisters. It's found in John 11:17 through 37. I want you to look at the response of Martha and in Mary in verses 21 and 32. How are they similar? How are they different? I believe they're almost identical statements. And it seems to me that these ladies have been having a conversation at home, perhaps, in the interval between the time that they notified Jesus of Lazarus' illness and when Jesus arrives on the scene. The statements made by these ladies reveal a great many assumptions that they had with regard to Jesus. And this really serves as the crux of our study today. So if you take a couple minutes to really concentrate on this, I think you'll gain the most benefit from this section. Take some time to evaluate their words with regard to their beliefs regarding the person of Jesus, his power, his presence, his will, and his obligations to him. This is a remarkable thing to look at. Although the words of Mary and Martha are very similar, their individual interactions with Jesus were very different. They start off on the same footing, but as the conversation with Jesus progresses, their responses to Jesus and Jesus to them are very different. So if you had to summarize Jesus' personal interactions with 2 very different ladies in one word or one term, how would you do that? That might be a good exercise for you to go through. Don't spend a ton of time on that, but it's just interesting to see how different people interact with Jesus and Jesus' mercy in the ways that he interacts with us. And they weren't the only ones who had an opinion. The people who were watching the scene from a distance also had their opinion of how Jesus should be doing what he should be doing. Look at verse 37 and get an understanding of what those people were seeing and saying. Scene 3 is Jesus' directive to Lazarus. We find in John 11:38 through 44. Now, in verse 22, it would seem as though Martha still believes that even though Lazarus is dead, God's going to do something on their behalf. So when they go to the tomb, Jesus says, roll away the stone, that which is the barrier between the living and the dead. And Martha has an intellectual objection to what Jesus is about to do. why would she object to that being done? And how is her response similar to how we often perceive God's method of doing things? And I want you to think carefully here. We've watched Jesus with the disciples, with the sisters, with the spectators. Jesus' interaction with Lazarus is unique and distinct and very different. Think carefully. This is a trick question. What was the primary difference between Lazarus' interaction with Jesus in this storyline and everyone else's? I think it's going to be amazing in its simplicity. The fourth scene is a passage we have not yet read. It's John 11, verses 45 through 53. And this is Jesus being discussed by the religious leaders. They hated Jesus, and they were torqued to hear that he had done another miracle that was causing people to believe in him. We find three very troubling statements that are indicative of the wickedness of the heart of men and the inclinations towards sin. I want to walk through these passages together in John 11, 47 through 48, John 11, 50, and 11, 53. Find these passages that reveals the compounding layers of sin. And now we come to the conclusion of the matter. Jesus stated his purpose for this event in John 11, 4, 15, and 42. In your eyes, how well did Jesus accomplish his purpose? What makes you have that perspective? In your own words, what was the real purpose behind the events described in John 11, 1 through 44? And finally, what do verses 51 and 52, particularly 52, mean to you? These verses kind of stand out there on their own, but I think they have profound value for us today. Take some time to look at that, and we'll be prepared to discuss them a little bit in our sermon that's coming up next. God bless you guys. Thanks for participating. I pray this time is a blessing for you and all who participate in this with you.